First contact. Captain Xyloth Kraxnar of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps stood rigidly at attention as the alien ship completed its docking procedure. This was it, the moment he had trained for his entire career. The first official contact between the Crete Imperium and the newly spacefaring species known as humans. Xyloth had pored over the intelligence reports, bipedal, mostly hairless, with an unsettling array of facial expressions. The briefings said they were a fractious and emotional species, prone to irrational behavior. He would need to be at the top of his game to establish a productive dialogue. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing a trio of humans. 2 males and a female, judging by the diagrams he had studied. They were draped in garish fabrics, and their mouthparts were fixed in an expression the cultural profiles labeled a smile. Most disturbingly, they immediately began striding toward him with arms outstretched. "Welcome to Earth," the lead human bellowed. "I'm Ambassador Jack Thompson. We're so excited to finally meet you in person." Before Xyloth could respond, the human had grabbed his primary grasping appendage and begun vigorously pumping it up and down. Xyloth froze in horror. They were touching him. Touching him with their bare flesh. He jerked his appendage free, mandibles clicking furiously. "What is the meaning of this? Explain yourself." The human ambassador looked confused. "It's called a handshake. It's how we greet each other. Didn't you get the cultural briefings we transmitted?" "I did," Xyloth snapped. And there was no mention of this. This ungloved grappling. As if on cue, the other 2 humans stepped forward, arms also outstretched. Xyloth recoiled, but there was nowhere to go. In seconds, all 3 of them were grabbing his appendages, his shoulders, even his torso, their bizarre smiles filling his visual field. "Ambassador Xyloth." "Yes, I'm Counselor Meredith Nakamura," the female said, grasping one of his secondary manipulators. "And this is General Ryerson. We're your official liaison team." The general, a barrel-chested male, went even further, throwing an arm across Xyloth's upper back and pulling him close. "We have so much to discuss, Ambassador. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Xyloth's sensor stalks quivered as he fought down a wave of panic. Beautiful friendship. More like a waking nightmare. He had prepared for hostility, for armed conflict. But this enthusiastic, unrestrained friendliness. Nothing in his long distinguished career had readied him for this. As the humans continued their effusive greeting, Xyloth sent a tightly focused thought burst to his ship in orbit. "Diplomatic command. This is Captain Kraxnar. We have a problem." The humans finally released him, and he resisted the urge to immediately spray himself with disinfectant. He eyed his escort warily as they ushered him down the docking umbilical toward the habitat ring. Stars above, this was only the beginning. An entire diplomatic summit loomed ahead of him, days if not weeks of interspecies dialogue. Days of potential. Handshakes. Xyloth shuddered. This was going to be the longest mission of his life. As he stepped into the cavernous human hangar bay, the general clapped him on the back, almost knocking him off his feet. "Welcome to Friendship Station Alpha, Ambassador," the human said with an enormous grin. "Let the Grand Galactic Alliance begin." Xyloth forced himself not to flinch. The Grand Galactic Alliance. More like the Grand Galactic Miscommunication. If the rest of humanity was anything like this liaison team, then the mighty Imperium was about to face the greatest diplomatic challenge of its long and storied history. And it wouldn't be the humans' fabled nuclear arsenals or quantum computers that posed the gravest threat. Oh no, it would be their smiles, their laughter, and by the progenitors, their handshakes. As Xyloth stepped into the cavernous receiving hall, he had a sinking feeling that the galaxy would never be the same again. Diplomatic difficulties. As Ambassador Xyloth followed his overly enthusiastic human escorts through the halls of Friendship Station Alpha, he silently prayed to the progenitors that the handshake would be the extent of their bizarre greeting rituals. His prayers went unanswered, And here's one we call a fist bump. General Ryerson declared, balling his hand into a compact bludgeoning implement. He held it out expectantly. Xyloth stared at the fist, mandibles twitching. Clearly this was some kind of dominance display, a threatening reminder of human physical strength. Well, Xyloth would not be intimidated so easily. Warily, he curled his primary grasping appendage into a fist analog and extended it, bracing for an impact. But the human merely tapped their fists together lightly, then made an exploding motion with his fingers while saying, "Booyah." "Booyah?" Xyloth asked, thoroughly confused. Was this some kind of battle cry? Counselor Nakamura laughed. It's just a fun thing to say after a fist bump. It means, like, heck yeah, or awesome. The universal translator implanted in Xyloth's oral canal struggled with the unfamiliar terminology. Heck yeah and awesome did not resemble any concepts in the Crete language. They seemed to be emphatic affirmatives, but with an added dimension of exuberance, playfulness. Xyloth's head was starting to ache. He had studied all the major human languages, even the long-dead tongues of their pre-spaceflight era, but nothing had prepared him for this dizzying onslaught of slang and informality. The humans paused before a large portal. "Ah, here we are, Ambassador," Thompson said. "Your private quarters, specially prepared to Crete specifications." Xyloth breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, a respite from the relentless assault of human customs. He could retire to his chambers, bathe in sterilizing radiation, and regroup. But as the door slid open, his relief evaporated. The room was a garish explosion of colors and patterns, with overstuffed furniture and an assortment of baffling objects strewn everywhere. Holographic depictions of splay-fingered human hands covered the walls. "We tried to add some homey touches," Nakamura explained. "You know, to make the space more welcoming. Our cultural experts picked them out." Xyloth's eyelid tics spasmed erratically. Homey touches, more like a deliberate attempt to unsettle and disorient. He swept a sensory palp over a hard, flattened obloid sitting on a low table. It depicted a grinning human with its arm cocked at an unnatural angle. "Ah, a classic football pose," Thompson exclaimed. "You're a fan." "Football." His translator struggled mightily. "Foot-ball. Some kind of ritualistic combat using primitive round kinetic weapons." Were the humans challenging him to a duel for dominance? Before Xyloth could inquire further, the general reached out and gripped his shoulder firmly. "We'll let you settle in, Ambassador. The banquet starts in one of your standard time units. See you there, buddy." Buddy. The word reverberated in his mind long after the humans had departed. A strange label, origin unclear. Did it have military meaning? Some kind of hierarchical rank? Xyloth shook himself. Focus on the mission. He chided himself as he began to disrobe for the sterilization chamber. The humans' bizarre customs were disorienting. Yes, their slang was incomprehensible, their decorating choices baffling. But they were still just another sapient species, like any other. He would analyze them, decipher them, and establish a productive dialogue. It was his duty as a diplomat and an officer of the Imperium. Still, a small voice chittered in the back of his mind as he began the cleansing cycle. The banquet. It loomed ahead of him like an impenetrable nebula, teeming with unknown dangers. If this was how the humans behaved in a formal diplomatic setting, what fresh horrors awaited him at a social gathering? Xyloth stepped into the disinfecting beam and closed his eyes, preparing his mind and body for the trials ahead. The humans' military capabilities may have brought the Imperium to the negotiating table, but he was beginning to suspect that their most fearsome weapon was not their fission bombs or their mass drivers. No, it was their devastating, incomprehensible friendliness. The banquet incident. Ambassador Xyloth stood before the entrance to the grand banquet hall, his sensory stalks quivering with trepidation. The human notion of a formal dinner filled him with a nameless dread. If their idea of a standard greeting involved aggressive appendage grappling and explosive fist-to-fist contact, What terrors would a meal with them entail? He took a deep breath, the recycled air of the station rasping through his spiracles. No, he was a diplomat, an envoy of the Crete Imperium. He would endure whatever barbaric feeding rituals the humans had in store. For the sake of peace, for the glory of the Imperium. Steeling himself, he stepped through the portal and froze, overwhelmed by a cacophony of sensory input. Garish colors assaulted his visual receptors from every angle. Streamers and banners in clashing hues draped the walls. Discordant sounds blared from hidden speakers, a grating mix of rhythmic thumping and high-pitched vocalizations. And the smells. Dear progenitors, the smells. A pungent miasma of unfamiliar organic compounds hung in the air, emanating from the long tables piled high with a staggering array of foodstuffs. Steam curled from heaping platters of charred flesh, pans of bubbling liquid exuded a sharp tang, and baskets overflowed with glistening orbs in every color of the visible spectrum. The humans milled about in a riotous swirl of laughter and chatter, holding plates laden with the alien delicacies. Xyloph's grasping appendage twitched involuntarily as he noticed they were all eating with their bare manipulators, casually bringing the food to their mouths as they talked. He was about to quietly back out of the room when Ambassador Thompson spotted him. "Xyloph, bold buddy, you made it." The human strode over, reaching out to clasp Xyloph's shoulder in that disconcertingly familiar way. The Crete diplomat flinched, but submitted to the contact, mandibles clicking softly in resigned acceptance. "Ambassador Thompson, I thank you for the invitation, but I fear I may not be properly equipped to partake of your sustenance." Thompson laughed, a booming sound that made Xyloph's tympanic membranes shudder. "Nonsense. We've got something for every palate. Here, try one of these sugar blaster supremes." He thrust a glistening orb into Xyloph's primary grasping appendage. Xyloph stared at the sphere, a garish red hue with flecks of crystalline white. A quick spectroscopic analysis revealed a shocking concentration of simple carbohydrates. Hesitantly, he raised it to his mandibles and took a tentative bite. An explosion of cloying sweetness flooded his gustatory receptors, so intense it was almost painful. He fought the urge to spit the foreign substance out, finally managing to choke it down. Thompson watched him expectantly, bushy facial protrusions raised. "It's very sweet," Xyloph managed, voice strained. Thompson's grin widened. "They don't call them sugar blasters for nothing. Here, wash it down with this." He shoved a fluted container into Xyloph's other appendage. The vessel was filled with a bubbling, effervescent liquid, hued a disturbing shade of green. Xyloph eyed it warily, but not wanting to offend, took a cautious sip. The fluid fizzed and popped on his tongue, a sharp tang that made his eyes water. "Ha! Look at you, slugging back the fizzy, lifting drink like a champ." Thompson slapped him on the back, nearly causing him to stumble. Xyloth opened his mandibles to reply, but was interrupted by a sudden commotion. General Ryerson had climbed atop a table, a bulbous glass container raised high in one hand. "A toast," the general bellowed. "To our new friends from across the stars. To the Crete and to the future." The assembled humans cheered and raised their own containers high. Then, to Xyloth's horror, they all took a deep swig, tilted their heads back, and began to float upwards, rising gently into the air like gossamer spores caught in an updraft. Xyloth chittered in alarm, grasping appendages flailing. The human's anti-grav technology was far more advanced than he had been led to believe. Was this some kind of trap? An ambush? But no, as he watched, the humans bobbed and spun lazily in the air, laughing uproariously. They reached out and clasped hands, forming a slowly revolving circle. General Ryerson, still clutching his glass, began to sing a slurred off-key melody. Sec-key rockets in flight. Afternoon delight. The other humans joined in, their voices rising in an atonal chorus. Xyloth watched in mute incomprehension, his mind reeling. This made no sense. None of it. The food, the drink, the singing. It was all so far outside his frame of reference. He might as well have been observing the incomprehensible mating rituals of some feral pre-sapient species. As the humans spun and warbled overhead, Ambassador Thompson leaned in close, his breath pungent with the fizzy lifting drink. "Simon Zyloff, old pal, join us. Let's show the galaxy what human-Crete cooperation looks like." He pressed his glass into Zyloff's appendage, a clear invite. The Crete diplomat stared at the bubbling green liquid, torn. Every atom of his being screamed at him to flee, to retreat to the sanity of his sterilized quarters, and huddle in a corner until this madness passed. But the mission demanded sacrifice. With a silent prayer to the progenitors, Zyloff raised the glass to his mandibles, and, in one convulsive motion, drained it dry. The room spun. His gastric sac churned. A strange effervescence filled his body, lifting him up, into the whirling maelstrom of singing, laughing humans. As he spun and bobbed, buffeted on all sides by the press of alien bodies, a giggle rose unbidden in his thorax. The humans' strange behavior, their constant violations of personal space, their utter disregard for protocol. It was all so absurd, so ridiculous, so funny. Afternoon delight. Zyloff warbled, waving his appendages in an approximation of the humans' gestures. "Skaki rockets." The humans cheered and spun faster, their laughter rising to a fever pitch. Zyloff laughed with them, all thoughts of dignity and decorum forgotten. Let the Imperium tremble at humanity's might. Let the galaxy marvel at their power. In this moment, spinning in the air amid a whirling kaleidoscope of color and sound, Zyloff knew a simple truth. There was no force in the universe that could withstand the human's ultimate weapon. Not Crete discipline, not Imperium tech. Nothing. For the humans had unlocked the secret to the strongest bonds of all. The bonds of revelry, of joy, of shared laughter in the face of an uncaring cosmos. In a galaxy riven by strife and conflict, perhaps that was the greatest power of all. Conspiracy revealed. Ambassador Zyloff awoke the next morning with a pounding headache and a mouth that tasted like he'd been chewing on reactor waste. He groaned, levering himself up from the tangled heap of his bedding. What in the name of the progenitors had happened last night? Fragmented memories swam through his throbbing head, floating in the air, spinning and laughing with the humans, singing garbled lyrics to strange melodies. Ambassador Thompson's arm slung around his shoulder, the two of them swaying together like old comrades. Zyloff shuddered, a wave of shame washing over him. He had disgraced himself, acting like some manic hatchling at his first spawning celebration. The humans and their bizarre customs had clearly infected him, weakening his discipline, eroding his self-control. He staggered to the refresher unit, splashing cold water over his sensory stalks. He needed to focus to center himself. He was here to negotiate on behalf of the Imperium, not to cavort and carouse with these unpredictable aliens. A chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission. Zyloff sighed and activated his comm unit. The holo display shimmered to life, revealing the scowling visage of Commander Zargax, his immediate superior. "Ambassador Zyloff," Zargax growled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "I trust you have an explanation for your behavior last night." Zyloff's antennae drooped. "Commander, I have no excuse. The humans, their customs, I allowed myself to become compromised." "Compromised?" Zargax's compound eyes narrowed. "You made a spectacle of yourself, cavorting and gyrating with the humans like some kind of party animal." Zyloff flinched at the term. Party animal. It was the gravest insult in the Crete language, reserved for those who had utterly abandoned self-control and propriety. "I understand your anger, Commander," he said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I assure you, it will not happen again. I will redouble my efforts to maintain proper decorum and—" "You will do more than that," Zargax cut in. "You will uncover the truth behind the humans' actions." Zyloff blinked, confused. The truth, Commander. Zargax leaned forward, his image looming large in the display. The Strategic Council has been analyzing the recordings of your interactions with the humans. Their conclusions are disturbing. A cold tendril of fear warmed its way through Xyloth's digestive tract. Disturbing how? These so-called greeting customs of the humans, the handshakes, the fist bumps, the shoulder clasps, the Council believes they may serve a more sinister purpose. Xyloth's headache intensified. Sinister? In what way? Zargax's mandibles twitched. Biological warfare. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the comm unit. Finally, Xyloth found his voice. Biological warfare. But how? Think about it, Zargax said, his tone grim. The constant physical contact, the exchange of bodily fluids through their drinking rituals. It's the perfect vector for spreading contagion. Xyloth's mind raced. Could it be true? Could the humans' seemingly innocent, if bizarre, customs actually be a cover for something far more nefarious? The Council believes the humans may be attempting to weaken us, Zargax continued, to infect us with some kind of slow-acting pathogen, sapping our strength before they strike. Xyloth thought back to the banquet, to the dizzying array of unfamiliar foods and drinks. His gastric sac churned at the memory. Had he been poisoned? Infected with some insidious human virus? But why would they do this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why resort to such underhanded tactics? Zargax's eyes glittered coldly. Because they fear us, Xyloth. They know the might of the Imperium, the superiority of Crete technology and discipline. They seek to undermine us, to bring us low before we can exert our rightful dominance. A leaden weight settled in Xyloth's thorax. It was all so clear now. The humans' overly familiar behavior, their constant violations of personal space. It was all a ruse, a ploy to spread their insidious infection. What would you have me do, Commander? Zargax steepled his grasping appendages before him. For now, continue to play along with their charade. Attend their social functions, endure their crude physical contact. But remain vigilant. Watch for any signs of illness or weakness among your staff, and report back on everything. Xyloth nodded slowly. I understand, Commander. I will not fail you, or the Imperium. See that you don't. The display winked out, plunging the room into darkness. Xyloth sat motionless, his mind awhirl with the implications of Zargax's words. The humans, bioweapons, a plot against the Imperium. It all made a terrible kind of sense. The pieces were falling into place like the facets of a fractured crystal. But even as resolve hardened within him, a small traitorous part of his mind whispered dissent. The part that remembered the warmth of Ambassador Thompson's smile, the joy in General Ryerson's laughter as they spun together in the air. Could beings capable of such simple, innocent pleasures really be plotting such vile treachery? Could their overtures of friendship truly mask a heart of malice? Xyloth shook himself. It didn't matter. His duty was clear. He would uncover the truth, no matter how unpleasant, or how much a small, secret part of him might wish it were otherwise. He was a warrior of the Imperium, a servant of the Crete, and he would not rest until he had laid bare the humans' plot, even if it meant shattering the fragile bonds of understanding they had begun to forge. For the sake of his people, for the sanctity of the Imperium, no price was too high to pay, even if that price was the dream of peaceful coexistence between human and Crete. The standoff. In the days following Commander Zargax's disturbing revelation, Ambassador Xyloth found himself in a constant state of anxious vigilance. Every handshake, every jovial shoulder clasp from the humans now took on a sinister cast. Were they really just friendly gestures, or were they something more insidious, a means of spreading some unknown contagion, weakening him and his staff for some future attack? He analyzed every interaction, every shared meal or drink, for signs of foul play. He submitted himself and his team to rigorous medical scans, searching for any hint of foreign pathogens or contaminants. But so far, all the results had come back clean. If the humans were indeed engaged in some kind of biological warfare, their methods were fiendishly subtle. Xyloth's mounting paranoia was not helped by the increasingly bellicose communiques from Crete High Command. They demanded constant updates on his progress in uncovering the humans' true intentions, while also pressuring him to extract more concessions in the ongoing trade negotiations. The strain was taking its toll. Xyloth's exoskeleton had taken on a sickly pallor, and he found himself jumping at shadows, startling at the slightest unexpected sound. The humans, for their part, seemed to notice the change in his demeanor. Ambassador Thompson, in particular, kept casting him concerned looks, his expressive facial features scrunched into a configuration that Xyloth's xenobiology training identified as worry. It all came to a head one fateful morning, 2 weeks into the trade summit. Xyloth was in his quarters, reviewing the latest batch of security scans, when a priority alert pinged on his comm unit. It was from Crete Military Intelligence, a terse report indicating a massive buildup of human warships in the neighboring star system. The ships were gathering near a previously unknown installation, one that the Crete spy drones had only just managed to detect through their advanced cloaking technology. The conclusion was inescapable. The humans were preparing for war. Their feigned overtures of friendship had been a ruse all along, a distraction to buy time while they marshaled their forces for a surprise attack on the Imperium. Xyloth felt a cold knot of dread settle in his thorax. He had to act, and act fast. The survival of his entire species might depend on it. With trembling appendages, he activated the comm unit and hailed Crete High Command. Commander Zargax's image crackled to life, his features taut with tension. "Report, Ambassador," he barked without preamble. "What have you uncovered?" Xyloth took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Commander, I believe the humans are preparing for an imminent attack. Military intelligence has detected a significant massing of their forces in a nearby system. They appear to be staging from a hidden base of operations." Zargax's mandibles clicked in agitation. "I knew it," he growled. "Those hairless apes and their insidious handshakes. I warned the Council, but they didn't listen." He leaned forward, his compound eyes boring into Xyloth's. "Ambassador, you must stall them. Keep them talking. Keep them distracted. While we mobilize our own forces, we'll show these upstart primates the true might of the Imperium." Xyloth swallowed hard, his digestive tract churning with a mix of fear and grim determination. "I understand, Commander. I will do whatever is necessary to protect our people." "See that you do. The fate of the Crete rests on your shoulders." With that, the transmission cut out, leaving Xyloth alone with his racing thoughts. He had to confront the humans, to demand an explanation for their duplicity and their warmongering. But he knew he would have to be cautious. The humans had already proven themselves to be cunning and unpredictable adversaries. There was no telling what treacherous tricks they might have up their sleeves. Taking a moment to compose himself, Xyloth strode from his quarters and made his way to the human section of the station. He found Ambassador Thompson and General Ryerson in the main conference room, huddled over a display screen with a group of their aides. They looked up as he entered, their expressions morphing into those unsettling human smiles. "Xyloth, old buddy," Thompson exclaimed, stepping forward with his hand outstretched. "What a pleasant surprise. We were just going over the latest trade proposals." "Spare me your dissembling, human," Xyloth snapped, ignoring the proffered appendage. "I know all about your secret plans, about the fleet you've assembled in the Ta Ceti system, ready to strike at the heart of the Imperium." Thompson blinked, his facial features contorting into a configuration that Xyloth recognized as confusion. Next to him, General Ryerson frowned, the furrows in his brow deepening. "Fleet. Strike force. Xyloth, what in the world are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent with me," Xyloth hissed, his mandibles quivering with rage. We've detected your ships massing near a cloaked base. You're preparing for war. Admit it. This whole friendship ploy, it was all a ruse to catch us off guard." Thompson and Ryerson exchanged a long, inscrutable look. Then, to Xyloth's utter shock, they both burst out laughing. "War?" Thompson gasped out between guffaws. "Xyloth, old friend, you've got it all wrong." "The fleet you detected," Ryerson chuckled, wiping moisture from his eyes. "It's not a strike force. It's a surprise party." Xyloth stared at them, utterly flummoxed. "A surprise party?" "Yes," Thompson said, grinning broadly. "We wanted to celebrate the successful conclusion of our trade negotiations, so we arranged for a joint human-Crete party. Music, dancing, cultural exchange, the whole shebang. We even had a special friendship pavilion constructed for the occasion." "Hence the cloaked base," Ryerson put in. "We wanted to keep it under wraps until everything was ready. It was supposed to be a grand gesture of our growing alliance." Xyloth felt the room spin around him, his entire worldview appending itself in an instant. A party. A celebration of friendship. It seemed too absurd to be true. And yet, he thought back over his interactions with the humans, their constant overtures of camaraderie and goodwill. Could it be that he had been mistaken all along? That his own paranoia and the hawkish urgings of his superiors had blinded him to the truth? As if sensing his inner turmoil, Thompson stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Xyloth's shoulder. The Crete ambassador tensed, but did not pull away. "Xyloth," Thompson said softly, his tone earnest, "I know our customs and ways of expressing friendship are very different from yours, and I know that's caused a lot of confusion and discomfort. But please believe me when I say that our desire for peace and cooperation is genuine. We truly do want to be your friends, your partners in exploring this vast, amazing universe together." Xyloth looked into Thompson's eyes, seeing there a depth of sincerity and warmth that could not be feigned. In that moment, he felt something shift inside him, a knot of tension and suspicion unwinding, replaced by a budding sense of hope and possibility. I believe you," he said slowly, the words feeling strange and unfamiliar on his tongue. "And I apologize for my accusations. It seems I have much to learn about the true nature of friendship." Thompson's grin widened, and he gave Xyloth's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "No worries, pal. We're all learning as we go. That's what friendship is all about. Growing, adapting, understanding each other better with each passing day." He extended his hand once more, and this time, Xyloth reached out to take it without hesitation, marveling at the strange but undeniable warmth of the human's grip. Perhaps, he thought to himself, there was hope for their two species after all. Perhaps, in the end, friendship would prove mightier than any fleet or armada could ever be. It was a strange, dizzying notion. But as he stood there, hand in appendage with his erstwhile enemy, Xyloth found that it was one he was more than willing to embrace. For the sake of his people, for the future of the Imperium, and for the dream of a galaxy united in bonds of trust and amity. Peace through understanding. The Great Friendship Gala, as the humans had dubbed it, was in full swing. The massive pavilion at the heart of the cloaked base thrummed with music and laughter, a kaleidoscope of color and light. Crete and human mingled freely, their initial wariness giving way to a tentative but growing camaraderie. Ambassador Xyloth stood at the edge of the throng, nursing a fizzy green beverage and marveling at the scene before him. If someone had told him a mere week ago that he would be attending a joint celebration with the humans, he would have thought them utterly mad. And yet here he was, bobbing his head to the strange but catchy rhythms of human pop music, watching his fellow Crete engage in friendly arm wrestling matches and karaoke duets with their new allies. It was a surreal sight, but also a heartening one, a testament to the power of open-mindedness, of the willingness to look past surface differences and embrace the common threads that bound all sentient beings. As if summoned by his thoughts, Ambassador Thompson materialized at Xyloth's side, his cheeks flushed and his eyes sparkling with good cheer. "Quite a shindig, Xyloth, old pal," he said, clapping the Crete diplomat on the back. "Looks like our two peoples are really hitting it off." Xyloth nodded, a warm feeling of contentment suffusing his thorax. "Indeed, Ambassador, I must admit, I had my doubts at first. But seeing this," he gestured to the lively scene before them, "it gives me hope for the future of our alliance." Thompson's grin widened. "That's the spirit. You know, I had a feeling you'd come around." Beneath that stern exterior, I always sensed a real capacity for friendship and understanding. Xyloth chittered softly, the Crete equivalent of a chuckle. "Well, you humans certainly have a way of breaking down one's defenses. Your relentless cheerfulness is a formidable weapon indeed. Just wait till you see our secret handshake." Thompson winked. "But in all seriousness, Xyloth, I want you to know how much we appreciate the effort you've made to bridge the gap between our cultures. It couldn't have been easy, overcoming all those ingrained assumptions and suspicions." Xyloth dipped his head in acknowledgement. "It has been a learning process, to be sure, but a valuable one. You humans have taught me a great deal about the true meaning of friendship, about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances and embracing diversity in all its forms." He paused, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "You know, when I first arrived here, I was convinced that our differences would be an insurmountable barrier, that the Crete way was the only way. But now I see how narrow-minded that view was, how much we stand to gain by opening ourselves up to new perspectives, new ways of thinking and being." Thompson nodded sagely. "That's the beauty of friendship, Xyloth. It enriches us, challenges us, makes us grow in ways we never thought possible. And when we learn to see past our differences, to focus on our common hopes and dreams, well, that's when the real magic happens." He turned to face Xyloth fully, his expression turning solemn. "I want you to know, my friend, that no matter what happens in the future, no matter what challenges our peoples may face, the bonds we've forged here will endure. The humans will always stand with the Crete, just as I know the Crete will stand with us." Xyloth felt a sudden tightness in his thorax, a welling up of emotion that threatened to overwhelm his carefully maintained composure. "Ambassador Thompson, Jack, I don't know what to say, except thank you. Thank you for your patience, your understanding, and your friendship. It means more to me than I can express." Thompson's eyes glistened, and he reached out to clasp Xyloth's appendage firmly in his warm, fleshy hand. "The feeling is entirely mutual, my friend. And please, call me Jack." They stood there for a long moment, hand in appendage, two beings from worlds utterly alien to each other, yet united by a bond that transcended all barriers of culture and biology. A bond of true, abiding friendship. And as the music swelled, and the laughter of Crete and human alike washed over them, Xyloth knew that, whatever the future might hold, that bond would be their guiding light, a beacon of hope and unity in a galaxy all too often divided by fear and mistrust. For in the end, it was not the strength of their ships or the cunning of their spies that would shape the course of history. It was the power of their compassion, their empathy, their willingness to reach out across the stars and embrace the fundamental kinship of all thinking creatures. In a universe vast and cold and often cruel, that was the greatest weapon of all. And it was a weapon that the Crete and the humans, together, would wield with pride and purpose, forging a future bright with the promise of a lasting peace, a peace born not of conquest or coercion, but of the simplest, most profound gesture of all. A hand, extended in friendship, met by an appendage, extended in trust. Two beings, two cultures, two worlds, united as one. In understanding, in respect, and in the unbreakable bonds of love. The end.